Peace be with you. All right. How you doing, people? Today I wanted to talk about a couple things. Not to go too crazy. See, I'm still dressed like a farmer. You know why? Because I'm a farmer. And it's the end of the season, almost. Got a couple more weeks in our CSA. But today I wanted to talk about something I have been thinking about. And that is the Christian imagination. And I don't mean by the Christian imagination like creative imagination, like Tolkien. I think Notre Dame always has a Christian imagination conference. They never invite me. You know why? Because I pissed a lot of them off. But that's how it goes, right? I don't care. You know, I'm not here to be liked necessarily. I mean, I like to be liked, but I'm not. That's not my purpose in life. Because you know why? Because I'm a grown up. But there we go. Yeah, the Christian imagination. So what I'm thinking, and I was writing about this morning on social media, that so many Christian denominations, include the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, and Protestant churches, they seem to take claims for kind of a historic claims. They have historic claims for Christianity. And for the Orthodox, we have holy tradition, which the holy tradition only goes. I mean, it is a venerable one, but it only goes back to the approval of the church by Constantine, because most of the Orthodox ritual, I shouldn't say most of the Orthodox, but much of the Orthodox ritual is based on court ceremonial. Which you better believe you're not doing all that smells and bells stuff when you're in catacombs, because that's how they find you, right? Likewise, the Catholic Church. I mean, they all have there's a kind of a legit claim, but it's not what you think. And like the Catholic Church, for instance, the claims to venerable tradition, with the papacy is particularly what the Roman Catholic Church points to. Is apostolic succession. But even both of those, right, the Protestants rejected that, and they thought they were going back to the quote-unquote primitive church. But they weren't, because it's impossible. We don't live in that world, and we don't know what they did. We can guess, and there's a lot of scholarly guesses out there, but that we don't know. So my claim is that all of them, their interpretations of the church are imaginative claims. So it's the church of their imagination, and I think I'm right. It is the church of their collective imagination, or the tradition of their imagination. But here's the thing, and I agree with this. I think. Christianity is a matter of the imagination. Let's see if I can remember how I wrote this exactly. My hot takes. Where the hell is it? There it is. No. Yes. Here we go. So let me clue you in. Yeah, hot take. There is no historical Christianity in the world as we know it. I stand by that claim. So, hotter take. There is only a Christianity of the imagination. What I just said. And hottest take. The more impoverished the imagination, the more impoverished the Christianity. Alternately, the richer the imagination, the richer the Christianity. Now, I'm not saying that any of those Christianities have it wrong, necessarily. But I'm saying if their imagination of it is impoverished, so will their expression of it be impoverished. And this is probably a radical take, I'm guessing. And you see this, even if you wanted to take a very traditionalist take on, say, serving the poor, like St. Francis. I think St. Francis of Assisi is a perfect example of an authentic, imaginative take on Christianity, because he bordered on the crazy. Right? I think he was a great example of an imaginative take on Christianity. where he took a line from the gospel and lived it out in his imagination. And in his imagination, it had to do with radical poverty and speaking to birds and lots of other crazy stuff. I'm going to go talk to the Sultan as I walk across the battlefield. That's an imaginative Christianity right there. And I think you see it. I think you see it in William Blake for sure. You see it in many of the saints of the East and the West. I imagine you do, but I think also you see in many of the alleged saints of the East and West. You see an impoverished imagination, right, which becomes very dark, or inhibiting, or whatever. I don't know how to describe it. It's just not feel. It doesn't feel good. But I think so. I was gonna have my guitar, and I think an example of the Christian imagination is in a song that's not a song you're gonna hear in liturgy, but I think it's a perfect example of folk song. Right? There were three men. Were three men going out of the west. Their fortunes and these three men made a solemn vow. John Barleycorn was dead, or must die. Right? I haven't been a while since I played that song, so I'm a little rusty. But the point I'm trying to make is, in John Barleycorn, even though you could say it's a secular folk song from God knows when, it's imbued with the Christian imagination of the death and resurrection of Jesus, even though it's about the death and resurrection of John Barleycorn as whiskey, apparently. I think by the end of the song, you realize, oh, he's whiskey. Okay, cool. And of course, when I first heard that song by Traffic, Steve Winwood, I love Steve Winwood. I was a teenager when I first heard it. And it had already been out for a while, but it's kind of, you're learning the musical tradition as a young musician. And I loved the song. I didn't know why I was so attracted to the song, but I just loved the whole idea, right? That kind of, you could even call it a neo-pagan imagination of the Christian imagination. And of course, then much later, I was probably in my late 20s or mid-20s at least, when I first read Sir James Fraser's The Golden Bough, which, it's kind of a funny book because I think he did it to disprove religion, and particularly Christianity, and all he did for me was reinforce it. Yeah, I'm going to go with Jesus as the green God. In fact, I'm going to show you. I love this. This is, oh my gosh, I just broke my guitar. No, I didn't. Oh my God! Here we go. So yes, check this postcard I bought decades ago. I bet I was 23 when I bought this, and it's been over my desk ever since. And it's, of course, you can tell it's if a Christ on the crucifix, but you can't see the cross. He's covered and covering vines, which is, talk about the true vine, right? Which I think is beautiful. Let me see. No, I did not break my guitar. And that's an example of, I think, of a Christian imagination too, because it kind of it liberates. I think that's the thing. There's two kinds of imagination. There's the liberation, and then there's the kind of imagination which we can call magic, that inhibits or traps or something like that. Right? Does it make sense? And I think this is what we go through. No, so for instance, I've been thinking a lot lately about Michaelmas, which is coming up next month, a week from Monday, the 29th of September. One of my favorite festivals of the Christian year. And because we always have a big harvest festival here at the farm right on or around Michaelmas, which we will be doing next Sunday. I'm looking forward to that. And we have a lot of people. If you go to a Waldorf school, you do this. This is where I picked it up when I was a Waldorf teacher. So we're going to have somebody be St. Michael. And we'll have the children, or whatever children are there. You don't get teenagers to do this, but younger children love to do it. They get to be the dragon. So we have a dragon skin we made, and we did a paper mache head of a dragon that we've been using for a while. So I'm thinking a lot about Michaelmas, And so here's an example. So one group of kind of Christians out there who talk a lot about the imagination are the anthroposophists, the followers of Rudolf Steiner. And they talk a good imaginative and Michaelic game. They're always talking about the imagination. But through COVID, I really got turned. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are anthropops, so don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't like anthroposophists. I do. But a lot of them, and even some of my friends, really showed the impoverishment of their imaginations through COVID. And one in particular, I don't know if you know who this guy is, Ari Thorenson. Do you know him? I think that's his name. I was really disappointed in him, even though I was never, not really interested in what he had to do as like he's a clairvoyant veterinarian or whatever. And people were saying, you gotta check this guy out, Michael. Oh my gosh, this guy is clairvoyant. He sees things, And I said, okay, whatever. And then, so I checked him out a little bit. It was interesting. I mean, it was not that interesting, but it was, do your thing, right? But what really pissed me off, and it pissed me off highly, is that he got into when the COVID shots were coming in and whether we should take them or not. And he was of the position to, go ahead and take it, but put Christ between yourself and the shot. And I have here's my thing. What the fuck does that mean? So put yourself between Christ and the shot. I mean, and then later he denied that he said it. And I know he said it because he said it on my friend Pierce. Had a podcast. I don't know if he's still doing it. And he interviewed the guy. And the guy said it. And I was like, I stopped listening then. I'm out. And lots of, and the thing is, we know it was a magical operation. We know it was. And a lot of anthropops caved. And it's weird because the anthropops were the people who never get vaccines. Right? They're aromatic. So apparently, they talk a good Michaelic fighting against evil game, right? But as soon as actual physical evil comes in, they're confronted with actual physical evil. What do? They cave, right? They disappear into the etheric, right there. So I'm kind of disappointed in that. But you can see this is an impoverished imagination, and I think Thorenson was probably trying to have a vital imagination, but it was a horrible take on it. And and of course, like everything else, the imagination is as dangerous as everything, or as safe as anything else in the world. So that's what I've been thinking about, and I've been thinking about a lot. And then because I think about this then, right? And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments about. And this is I'm kind of scattered here today, thinking about the reimagination of Christianity or of Catholicism, whatever you call it, right? And certainly there's danger there, and for me, and this is just my kind of way to reimagine it. It just gets more medieval, I guess, or like when Chesterton say something along the lines of as soon as we get I have the book right here. I'll grab it for you. Hold on. Here he is. Now, Chesterton is like one of the funniest guys who ever lived, I think. I heard a story by one of my colleagues at Marygrove College. His father went to Notre Dame probably in the 1940s or something. And Chesterton came to give a speech there. And he was super fat at this time. He was really overweight. And he couldn't get out of the taxi when they brought him to Notre Dame. And I don't know. And then, so they're trying to get him out of the taxi, and one of the guys trying to help him there said, "Well, Mr. Chesterton, maybe if you could turn on your side." And apparently Chesterton said, "Young man, I have no sides." Yeah. So like, you gotta love a guy like that. But here's what he wrote, right? If we ever get the English back onto onto the English land, they will become again a religious people. If all goes well, a superstitious people. The absence from modern life of both the higher and lower forms of faith is largely due to a divorce from nature and the trees and clouds. If we have no more turnip ghosts, it is chiefly from the lack of turnips. So for me, this imagination, and I've talked about this a lot before, is really connected to the land and connecting the liturgical cycle back to the land, back to the agricultural cycle. And because I think when Christianity did that, especially in the West, I can't speak for the East, even though I'm technically an Eastern Catholic. I can't speak for these, but in the West, when the liturgical cycle was connected to the agricultural cycle, it was a more vibrant, imaginative Christianity that had, that we can call it folk elements of folk religious elements that came into it, the belief in relics and pilgrimage and all the stuff the peasants like to do. If you go to the Renaissance, to the early modern period, people like Thomas More and Erasmus, they didn't like that kind of low class expression of Christianity exhibited by the peasant class. But my take is that it was that peasant class that enriched what happens is the peasant class comes up with these things like even Marian devotion, for instance, and that filters up into the hierarchy, and then they act like it was their idea, right? But I think it's really the fertilization of you could say the theological traditions by the folk traditions that keeps any religion alive, not just Christianity. But that's an example of imagination, just like John Barleycorn, is a Christian imagination. And the more we have of that, the better. But we don't have a lot of that. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to say today, because I think it's an important topic, especially for our times, which are so impoverished of imagination. We have, our imaginations are impoverished because we watch the movie of Lord of the Rings. We don't read the books, so we don't have the imaginative pictures building up inside of our heads. We just get them pre-digested to us, and this is what Disney is horrible about, right? And so before there was any kind of media like that, people had relied much more on their imaginations to fill in the pictures. When there was just storytelling, for instance, and no movies or even picture books, you had to rely on the power of the imagination. And talk about atrophied. How atrophied is that? We could call it organ of perception, as Goethe called it. How atrophied could that possibly be? Or how much more atrophied could it possibly be? So anyway, let me know your thoughts. Hey, check it out. I could show you. Maybe I will show you. There's a praying mantis, a little baby one. Let me see if I can get him. See him? Little praying mantis right there on my wall. See, he likes apparently praying mantis likes folk traditions as well. Anyway, I'm fading out because I moved the camera, and now the camera there it goes. The camera didn't know what to do. So anyway, I hope you and your families are all well, and I will see you next time. God bless.